Many are still grieving. Some families will be lost to one another forever. To those of you who face the difficulties of reconnecting with family and establishing ongoing relationships, we say sorry. We offer this apology in the hope that it will assist your healing and in order to shine a light on a dark period of our nation's history. To those who have fought for the truth to be heard, we hear you now.
You're listening to Adopt Perspective Podcast, a podcast for anyone affected by adoption. I'm your host and president of Jigsaw Queensland, Jo Sparrow. This podcast is a production of Jigsaw Queensland Post-Adoption Support Service. However, the views expressed are those of the people participating and not necessarily Jigsaw Queensland. The podcast discusses adult themes and listener discretion is advised. Welcome to Adopt Perspective Podcast. I'm your host and president of Jigsaw Queensland, Jo Sparrow. Today on Adopt Perspective, I'm pleased to welcome Heather Waters. Heather is a South Australian filmmaker, writer, and advocate whose work focuses deeply on the experiences of adoptees, forced adoption practices, and the long-lasting impact adoption has on identity, family, grief, and belonging. Heather was adopted shortly after birth and raised as an only child in a single-parent family. She began making films in 2012 with The Lost Souls, a short dramatisation based on actual accounts of a woman in 1968 forced to give up her baby. More recently, in 2019, Heather directed You Should Be Grateful, a documentary narrated by adult adoptees exploring myths, truths, and the complexity of adoption, especially what is expected of adoptees in the narrative of gratitude. She also made You Were Chosen, Secrets of Closed Adoption, a documentary piece interviewing adoptees and adoption law experts. Heather's work has been recognised in various short film and documentary festivals, and she's also turned You Should Be Grateful into a book. You've done some work, girl. Just released in 2024, expanding on the interviews in the film. Her films and writings seek not just to tell stories, but to challenge the way that society understands adoption, the expectations placed on adopted people, the secrecy or lack thereof, an ongoing effect of identity loss, and the need for adoption practices and policies that more fully respect the adopted person's experience and rights. Her film, You Should Be Grateful, will be showcased at an AdoptEA event hosted by founder of AdoptEA, Judy Glover, at the Carindale Brisbane City Council Library on Saturday, the 11th of October at 1:30 p.m. The AdoptEA are a series of events running during Mental Health Month to increase the awareness and understanding of the impacts of adoption on adopted people and reduce the stigma associated with reaching out and seeking support. Judy's vision is to create opportunities for adopted people to connect with each other informally, reflect on their experiences, and build peer support. If you'd like to know more about how the AdoptEA events came about, I interviewed Judy on the 14th of September in 2022. And at the end of this episode, I'll provide some more details about events that are already planned for this year and how you can host one of your own. Meanwhile, welcome, Heather. I am so happy to have you join us.
Hi everyone, and thanks Jo. I'd like to thank you for welcoming me to your podcast and providing a space for the incredibly important topics around adoption. Touching on the ambitious side of what you said, the last film took me 6 years to edit, so it was definitely a labour of love, and it was everybody that's been following me and backing me along the way. They just get these little messages of encouragement, so that's really what keeps me going, and I just love it. So as it was back in the day, I was told I was adopted at the age of 8. I recall the moment I was told. It was a sunny day. I was walking down the street with Mum. I don't remember if I asked many questions around it, but I do remember asking what that meant because I really didn't understand. And I was just told that it means that I've got another mother somewhere. And I kind of just left it at that. We were heading off to catch the bus into town. So I was just a kid. So that was that.
Yeah. What were
And
some of the earliest moments in your life where you felt the effects of being adopted?
Yeah, so most of it really, from what I can recall, was in the schoolyard with my peers, asking me things like, "Oh, don't you want to find your real mum? And you're adopted. You can run away if you want to." There was only one other girl in my class who I was aware of, that was adopted, and her name was Heather also, which was bizarre. Um, I guess other occurrences, just things that like I looked physically different to my family, not just facial, but my body. Everything was different, my behaviors. So, on an everyday scale of things, there was always that visual image of being different, aside from all the other things that were being talked about. Um,
Yeah.
Medical history questions, going to the doctor, not knowing what my history was. When I was a child, mum would answer, but as I got a bit older, I had to answer, and I didn't know. But in saying that, I have met my family, and even though I have, it doesn't take away the fact that even now to this day, when I'm asked that question about any medical thing that might be in my family history, my body still reacts to that, which I find incredible. Even though it's for so long, I've known my family, and more recent years know a lot more about the medical side of it. My body still reacts, even though I can answer the question now, which I find just fascinating. It's not a comfortable thing to be in, but it's just fascinating.
It is fascinating, and I totally understand that. Every time I go to the doctor, and particularly if it's a new doctor, and actually I've got a specialist appointment just tomorrow, and I know they're going to ask me about a family history, and I've almost braced myself for it because it's really frustrating. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know, it's just some things stick, and a lot of things you're not aware of either. And just somewhere along the line you'll catch it and you think, oh, here's another thing I need to unpack. So yeah,
Yeah.
I
So,
think
yeah, sorry, Heather, what were you going to say?
I was just gonna sort of touch too on being an only child, raised in a single parent family. I tucked myself away one weekend and just bought books on adoption, books on being an only child, just so that I could try and figure out what's attached to being an only child and the way I'm behaving, and what's attached to my adoption. Um, it's some things were quite clear, but most of it was quite difficult to sort of separate. So yeah, and I've in my filming experience, I've actually come across a couple of adopted people who were also raised an only child with a single parent. So that kind of I felt very, very isolated in that experience, because most other adoptees have either got both parents or they've got another adopted sibling, which was my mum's intent, but it never happened. So I felt quite even more isolated, having a bit of a different experience to everyone that I knew. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So at the age of 4, you began in the performing and creative arts with ballet and drama and some other things, I think, as well, and then later photography. How did those early artistic experiences contribute to your perspective as a filmmaker, particularly in relation to your identity as an adoptee?
Yeah, well, I was part of performing arts from the age of 4, being on stage and being creatively expressive that way. I think being drawn to creativity and being an only child also provided a space for me to find my own creative play. So I was often taking photos as well. I loved doing photography from a very young age. I was introduced to professional photography in high school, which I loved. Although I couldn't afford photography equipment for many, many years, I still did continue taking photos. And later that kind of progressed into filming, more so for and editing as well, but it was more so for my own personal films that I'd created on vacations and so on. I have a broad creative streak in me. Calligraphy, lead lights, any kinds of crafts, drawing, painting, you name it. But I just I'm drawn back to filming. That's just where I sit. Editing, the creative side of the editing a film and making it come to life is really something that I enjoy doing. Um, the same with painting, like painting a room. Most people hate it, but I love it because I can see the finished result, and I love that. Okay, so as I got older, into my early 20s, I was searching for something, perhaps meaning for my life, who I'm supposed to be. I delved into a raft of various spiritual and ethereal literature looking for something. It wasn't until I decided to buy a bunch of books on adoption and being an only child that I started understanding the adoption side of myself, and this seemed to feel like what I was searching for. So within that journey, I learned a lot about what lights my fire and the path I need to be on. It simply made sense to combine my love of creating film and passion for adoptee rights. This is the path I'm meant to be on, and it just feels right.
Yeah, that's great. So, when did you first feel compelled to make work about adoption?
So the first spark of venturing into the journey of professional filmmaking was when I had sold almost everything I owned to move to the UK. The move didn't work out, so I returned home to almost nothing. At that time, the Senate inquiry had just taken place, which I read a lot of. I found that it really moved me to the core, so I started searching for films that tell real stories about adoption experiences, and not like the glorified versions that are seen on TV, like Find My Family and the like, but reflections of what it's really like. And I struggled to find anything. So, being completely destitute, I decided to write a script. And the thing about me is that when I want to do something, I just do it. Sometimes probably to my detriment, but that's where my fire kicks in. The intent was to commission the script for funds to support myself, but following a string of events and a lot of beautiful creatives believing and joining in my work, I found myself directing the film. So that's how The Lost Souls was born.
Amazing, amazing.
It was,
So,
it,
yeah, go on. Actually, part of me is still stuck on the fact that you like to paint a room way back then too.
I know.
It
I've
just
painted
seems
my
funny,
entire house.
actually. I have to talk to it because it's my most hated thing in the world.
Don't like it.
So how has your own journey influenced the way you see adoption policy or what you think adoptees need to heal and flourish?
Yeah, so I think my own journey of self-discovery, it's led to a lot of research, it's led to a lot of realization that although Australia is leading the charge for reform, there's still so much very more that needs to be addressed, both here and on a global scale. Um, I believe that for a person who has already been adopted is to not avoid it. Being separated from family is part of the adoptee story, part of identity. Being adopted brings its own challenges, and bringing that realization into awareness is the first step to healing. It's acknowledging all those challenges that surface and not dismiss them, but validating them. In terms of policies, from the ground level, every single adopted person needs to be afforded access to everything about them. It's a human right to know who one is and to have identity. Without that, a human is an empty vessel. There's no foundation to build self from.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so let's talk about You Should Be Grateful, which will be screening at Carindale Library this month. What was your intention with this documentary and what myths or societal expectations about adoptees did you want to explore or disrupt?
Sure. So, the intent behind You Should Be Grateful was to create a series of documentaries which purposefully labeled with the titles of phrases that collectively adoptees hear throughout their lives. So the titles are purposefully designed to bring home one of the realities that adoptees are challenged with. So the expectation that we should be grateful or that we were chosen, for example, are two phrases we commonly hear throughout our lives. The opportunity arose from a government grant, which is an ongoing small grant afforded by the Australian government as a direct result from the National Apology for Forced Adoptions. So from that, I organised a getaway, and with their consent, and I mean, they are the adoptees, we filmed open conversations around stories of adoptees. Outside of the getaway, we then interviewed a few of the adoptees and created the documentary.
It's a fascinating watch. It really is. Yeah, I found myself just glued to the screen and And my heart broke in quite a few places actually, because it was a lot like watching a peer support group in many ways, which I facilitate very regularly. And yeah, the stories like, yeah, they really broke my heart sometimes. Yeah. Bring some tissues if you're coming to Carindale.
Absolutely. A couple of the adoptees were there, because one of them sort of my age, which is heading up towards 60 now, but at the time not so much, still later in age, but never met another adopted person. There were two adopted people there in that small retreat that or getaway that had never met another adopted person. So they've gone their whole life not having that sounding board of normality in their experience. So I couldn't imagine. Uh, yeah, I mean, even as an adopted person, having that common thread with other adopted people, you can mix with them, and you just instantly know. You just have this knowing, this connection. Um, but even within that, there's other things like intercountry adoptees. Their experience has a whole other layer which I know nothing about, but yet we still share that adoption experience. But yeah, there's and then late discovery adoptees, they also have another layer, and so on and so on. So even though we're all kind of interconnected, we're also not. We're also very different. Yeah.
Yeah. So the film's narrated by adult adoptees. How did you select or invite the participants?
So emails and advertisements on social media were sent out to invite adoptees for a film test. And then we filmed a bunch of those who were interested to both see how they felt being filmed and for us to hear their stories. Their stories span across a range of experiences, from Louise, who had severe medical birth trauma right from the beginning, which has affected her whole life, to Melinda, who had experienced losing her son to adoption and the tragedy of secrecy around his death, to Anthony being rejected all over again, Penny, who only recently began her journey of self-discovery, and Daryl trying to find his place in the world, all of them experiencing the secrets and lies that accompany being adopted. So it's quite a mix of stories, all of which have common themes. Also, there's Nikki Hartman, who is the Manager of Relationships Australia Post-Adoption Support Services. She's the glue within this film. She really gives some great insight into the complexities that adoptees present within their counselling services. So overall, the film really shares a load of information.
Yeah. So what were the things that you discovered in their stories that surprised you?
So the points I make about adoption not really being child focused currently, and the mindset really needs to shift. It's so absolutely true. Adoption is still focused on the adult need for wanting a child, when it really needs to shift to something like, I see and feel for this traumatized child. What can I do to help them? This does not have a first option of removal from family or country, and if it did come to that, the focus would still need to be that of, I'm here for you, what do you need, as opposed to, you're my child or you're here for me. The feedback from this, especially from those that are not in the adoption arena but curious, is of surprise, that it was as a whole new way of looking at adoption, and they totally get it and agree. So anyone I speak with agrees with this way of looking at adoption. Unfortunately, it's still a huge challenge to shift the narrative. There's a lot of resistance for various reasons, depending, I believe, in part, on where geographically one lives. So, for example, you can get Australian have a different view to what Americans do, probably because we're more open, we have more freedom around adoption, whereas Americans there's still many states you can't even access your own information.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that frustrates me about adoption too is it's always at the focus of the child, while they're under 18. We're only under 18 for, 18 years, right? And then we're adults for the rest of our lives, and we have to deal with the repercussions of an identity that's been changed and all the other things that come with adoption. And I think we need to start looking at it with a much longer view, so that we're not just thinking of children and the need right now. We actually need to think about that in long term as well. So let's move on to The Lost Souls. It's a dramatized short about forced adoption practices. What did creating that piece teach you about the emotional and historical landscape of forced adoption in Australia? And how did that set the stage for what comes later?
So the Lost Souls really opened my awareness to the atrocities of the past adoption practices. I wasn't aware of the lengths that were gone to in order to hide things, all the ways in which the mothers were treated, all the things that happened to the babies. Um, I did know, but not to that level. It really broadened my knowledge and understanding of the adoption experience as a whole. So in making that film as an entry point, I really felt like it needed to punch, like the opening of a film has a hook. So too, this needed to be my hook. In saying that, it was a challenge to capture and condense the whole adoption event in a short film. The film is primarily centered around the mother of loss. However, it was to be my stepping stone into the filmmaking world in raising awareness for adoptees. So I had to gain an audience, and that was how to do it.
Yeah. So you were chosen Secrets of Closed Adoption. What distinguishes this from You Should Be Grateful, and what new conversations on or legal policy questions does it engage?
So you were chosen, the second documentary in the series. This focuses more so on two adoptees, with Professor Shirley Swain explaining the effects that adoption has had on the lives of adoptees and how the landscape has changed over the years. Patricia is a late discovery adoptee, finding out when she was 49, which adds an entire other layer of challenge to identity. And Ferg, who was adopted shortly after birth and remained in Scotland while his biological mother left the country. So his story is more around being denied the truth from his adoptive parents, the lies he faces, and exclusion from family, as it's so familiar with adopted people. In this, Shirley really brings home the need for shifting focus onto the adoptee and affording them to make the decision if being adopted is something that they want rather than something placed upon them without consent.
So you've turned You Should Be Grateful into a book last year. What made you decide to expand it to print, and what does the book offer that the film couldn't?
Yeah, so the book, well, often you hear film being an adaptation of a book. So because I like to challenge the norm, I decided to turn it around and make the film into a book. So there was one adoptee who didn't really understand that in editing a film, a lot of the footage is not included in the final product. And his reaction to that was one of surprise and seeming disappointment. This was actually the spark that encouraged me to include in the book all the really great content that simply couldn't fit into the documentaries. So for those who love reading, they'll get the whole uncut show.
Yeah. So what have been the biggest challenges in producing these works?
Really, the biggest challenges are funds. The first film, at the 11th hour, an investor stepped in and saved the production. That was for The Lost Souls. The second film, I used a small amount of grant funding, and the remainder of the funds was it's self-funded. The more recent film is completely self-funded. Funds from sales and a small amount from crowdfunding has also gone towards these works. However, without any real funding support, I simply can't sustain this work. Distribution is another challenge. The film industry is unpredictable, and so too is what people want to watch. So it's a matter of finding the right balance and that one piece of work that hits the mark in a predominant way. And I found other challenges that go with making a film are relatively easy to overcome. It's like one door closes, another one opens, and I just feel like the universe is kind of helping me along the way to make sure these happen. But this distribution and funding is the biggest two things.
Yeah. So what surprised you in terms of audience reception?
I think the biggest thing that stands out with regards to audiences is their silent reactions after watching the films. Granted, they're not like films, but the silence really gets me. Beyond the silence, though, I hear a lot of really great conversations being had. Really, though, the conversations between when I first began 13 years ago and now, they seem to have mellowed somewhat. When I released The Lost Souls, the conversations that followed were many and intense and inquiring, which is great. That was the whole purpose. There were people sharing their stories with me. There was a lot of hype around adoption. I'm not sure why, but perhaps we're in a different place now in that it's more commonly spoken about, or maybe there's more awareness around it. I'm kind of speculating, but in my world, it definitely has settled. Although there are still conversations being had, so that's good.
Yeah. I mean, maybe social media and the access to content that's constantly coming up around adoption too has changed the way we view things, and that we're getting, drip-fed information every single day. Whereas at once upon a time, a film was something quite unique, whereas now we're getting content sent to us very quickly. Yeah.
Agree.
So looking ahead, what projects are you working on now?
My creative mind is constantly going. Moving forward, I've got ideas for next installments of films around adoption. There's many facets to adoption, like I mentioned before, intercountry adoptions. There's donors and so on. There's also the global voice of commonality, which would give rise to a strong argument for those who wish to silence us. There's also a plethora of information that I'd like to depart to those who are interested. I'm always learning new things in the space of psychology and child psychology, and sort of overlaying that onto the adoption experience and hoping to get together a wealth of information to help other adoptees unravel their own webs and ultimately return to their own selves through understanding their own inner child's voice. So hopefully a workshop will come out of that.
Now, I heard a whisper that you're going to be involved in are you laughing at my dog?
I
No.
am.
Yes.
I've got surprised they haven't come in yet. Gorgeous boy.
Bobbing around behind me. He does it all the time. So yeah, I did hear a whisper that you're going to be involved in a Q&A following the film at the Carindale Library viewing. Is that right? And what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, very exciting coming up on the long weekend. So after you should be grateful, I'll be available online with a cup of tea to answer any questions around the making of any of the films or any adoption related questions. So pretty much I'm an open book, no pun intended.
Oh gosh, don't open that up. I'm going, you never know what's going to come in.
And I don't know what I'm saying here. I could be
No, you
nice.
heard it here. Open book, everyone.
That's all right.
Now, I also saw that I saw somewhere recently that people might be able to view the film online during the Carindale event. Is that correct? Is that what you have heard? Yeah, maybe.
View the film online during the Carindale
And
event.
I heard that people might be able to, if they can't come in person, they might be able to watch it online. I think there was something around.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's going to be streamed
Stream,
online.
that's the word I'm looking for. Thank you. It's late at night here, everyone. I'm not thinking of my words. Yeah. So now I don't know all of the details of that, but you can check the AdoptEA Facebook page, because just find the event there, and I'm sure there'll be something there about it, or just keep an eye out for when it does get announced. But for listeners who are wanting to explore your work, who can't make it to the AdoptEA event or can't stream, what's the best place for them to access You Should Be Grateful, You Were Chosen, The Lost Souls, or your book? Where can they find them and support you going forward?
Thanks, Joe. Yep. So the Lost Souls is freely available on YouTube. So that's just type in the Lost Souls, and it's got a lady with a red coat, and that's our film. The rest of the work can be is available in DVDs, although they're phasing out. Although I'm still selling some in books and streaming. So all of that can be accessed by going to watersproductions.com.au. And the link to the streaming service will be sent via email from there, because that's available on a separate platform. And also all the books are available on Kindle. Essentially everything is, if you want to go to watersproductions.com.au, all of it can be accessed through there. We're also on Facebook under Waters Productions AUS, and Instagram at Waters Pro. And if anyone's interested in being an executive producer, investor, or like to simply support our work, simply email us at watersproductionsfilm@gmail.com.
Excellent. So, Heather, thank you so much for sharing your stories and your creative journey and your insights. And I'm really looking forward to going to Carindale and watching your film again with everybody else. It's going to be an incredible experience.
Thank you so much, Joe. Yeah, I'm really excited about it. I can't wait.
Now, everyone, hang on for a moment, because I've got to go through a whole pile of information about adoptee events. So I apologize in advance, but lots of good information coming. So there are a number of adoptee events planned for Queensland Mental Health Week this year, and Jigsaw is proud to be sponsoring Judy's Carindale event, which will also be attending along with other events, and we're going to be hosting our own as well. And so here are some of the details that we know at the time of recording. And you can also visit the AdoptEA Facebook page. It's spelt AdopTEA. So remember that. For more events and to RSVP to any of the events that are happening, it'll have the RSVP details. Or if you want to host your own event, go ahead and do that. So Carindale Library, Judy Glover's event. It's including a screening of You Should Be Grateful, and it'll be held at the Carindale Library at Westfield, Carindale, 1151 Creek Road on Saturday, the 11th of October at 1:30 p.m. The event is supported by Post-Adoption Support Queensland, who provide resource packs for all the adoptee events, and it's funded by Jigsaw Queensland's Forced Adoption Support Service, and with technical support from Adoptee Rights Australia, who must be looking after that stream, I think. It's free to attend, includes a delicious afternoon tea, and RSVPs are essential via Adoptees Queensland, that's spelled AdopteesQLD, at gmail.com. And in Inala, there's the Inala Adoptee Morning Tea. The amazing Margie Nightingale MP, who is a member for Inala, is going to be hosting a morning tea at the Chats Cafe at 528 Waterford Road, Forest Lake, on Tuesday, the 18th of October from 9 till 10. The amazing Judy Glover and I will be guest speakers at that event, and bookings are essential via the link on Margie's Facebook page. And I'm really excited about that one because I grew up in Inala and went to Richlands High, so that's my old stomping ground. So I can't wait to be back there and have a chat. And then there's the Jigsaw Queensland Mixed Support Group Adoptee. So Jigsaw is going to be hosting an adoptee event, excuse me, straight after our mixed support group in the meeting room at New Farm Library on Saturday, the 4th of October. The group runs from 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. and then we're going to host the adoptee straight after it. And that goes until 5 p.m. And it just gives people more time to mingle, to chat and socialise and mark that event together. There'll be more details, including our theme for all of October, on the Jigsaw Queensland Facebook page. So thank you again for joining us and sticking with me during all that information. Adopt Perspective, we're committed to amplifying voices like Judy's and Heather's, and I thank them for their courage in sharing their truth and to help others see, understand, and heal. And for anyone that's tuning in, excuse me, remember that every adoption experience is unique and it's never too late to begin your own journey of exploration. And if you're looking for more resources, support, or simply a space to share, Jigsaw Queensland's here to help. If you'd like to support the podcast, please leave us a review. A nice one would be good. And share an episode with a friend or get in touch with your feedback because we really love to hear from you. So do you have a story that you'd like to share on the podcast? Head to the Adopt Perspective page on the Jigsaw Queensland website and fill out our prospective guest form. And don't forget that Adopt Perspective is listened to all over the world. So thank you for listening. I'm Jo Sparrow, and bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Adopt Perspective podcast. If you'd like to find out more, go to the podcast page on www.jigsawqueensland.com and you'll find a wealth of information and resources on the website. If you reside in Queensland, you can reach Jigsaw Queensland's Forced Adoption Support Service on toll-free 1800 210313, or you can call Jigsaw on 07 33 58 6666. If you live in another state of Australia, you can still call the Forced Adoption Support Service number and your call will be answered by the Forced Adoption Support Service in the state that you're calling from. In every other state, Relationships Australia operates this service. A big thank you to Matt Sparrow for composing and recording our original theme music. Until next time, I'm Jo Sparrow saying farewell from Adopt Perspective, a podcast for anyone affected by adoption.